to talk about would be how we embrace personal rituals around someone who's died in your life. You know, I know that every morning I go look at my photo and look at and have a little chat to Adam, and often do a little meditation or something like that. That's just to acknowledge him every day and then every night, and I'm always thinking of him during the day, on and off, but you know, and then I only have to look at the other kids and I see Adam because they all look alike and they sound alike and everything else, so I feel like he's there all the time. But I just wondered if you have any rituals that you've done in the past. I mean, I know on his birthday I will make his favourite cake.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He used to like chocolate muffins, so I would do that. And at Christmas I set the table, and I've always got a chair for him at the table, and then his beer and his Toblerone.
Wow.
Because he's here with us. He's here right now. I've got the wallet there. He's here all the time, so I know that he's around, and so I acknowledge that he's here. And even though I can't say hi and grab onto him, I know that he's around. So I like to have those things set up for him. Have you?
I find that interesting because I haven't got any rituals.
Yeah.
I mean, with my mother, I guess because when she died when I was a child, didn't really think to have any rituals as a child. And also back then, because this was in the early 70s, when she was buried, she wasn't talked of again. So it was, there were no rituals, and I grew up not having rituals, so I find this really interesting. But of course I think of her frequently. You know, and when situations arrive, as you say, you know, sometimes it's like, you know, well, you know, I wonder what my mother would have thought of this, or her grandchildren and whatever, and think of frequently. But no, I don't have any rituals, so I'm really intrigued to hear about yours and setting that seat at the table.
Because he's there amongst the family, so I just like him to know that he's being acknowledged. I've had some chats with different mediums and clairvoyants just through my show, and he's appeared as in he's been there each time, so I know that he's around. And they say that children do actually stick with a family once they cross over to the other side. They will be with the family because they want to share with what you're doing. So
right, well, that makes sense. Yeah,
so he's probably, like, my father passed away a couple of years before Adam, but I haven't got anything regarding rituals and that with my dad, but it's been with my son. And I think a lot of parents would probably really relate to that. With losing their children, you know, it could be a favourite toy or, just something that you used to enjoy with the person. You know, and I always think of food because, you know, being a boy, being a son, he liked food, and all kids like food. So, have you done anything at all?
We had the very formal rituals like the funerals and things like that, and I think it is different when it's your parent. It was too early to lose Mum. Dad, however, I wouldn't have wanted them to prolong his life at that point. It would have been cruel and invasive. And you know, he'd suffered a stroke, and then he suffered a series of TIAs on the day. And but what I thought when you said rituals is more my way of honouring them is I would say to my own children, oh, I wish you'd known your mum, your grandmother. I wish you'd known Maura. She would have really liked that, or she would have been so proud of you for doing that. Or, and then the thing with food is just pavlova. Mum made one for Christmas.
Okay.
So anything special she made is already part of our family tradition with the food for the, what's the word? They're not events. Festivals, I suppose, is a secular word for them, but they're religious festivals. So you've got Easter, you've got Christmas and things like that. We always celebrate it. So Mum would always make a pavlova, so I took that on. And now my daughter is. So I see it as a continuation of something that was part of our family. Not necessarily, it honours her, but it's not about just saying, oh, I want to remember that she's dead, or I want to remember her right now in that
Yeah.
sense. But when I had not long lost mum, and I had a boyfriend come to visit me in my hometown, which is a long way from where I was living. And I remember saying, I wish you could have met my mum. She would have really liked you. And the only way you can meet her is through this photo. And I showed him a photo.
Yeah.
He thought I was so maudlin and I should be over it and I should have recovered and everything else. And at the time, I just thought, you've obviously never lost anyone.
Yeah.
When you do, you'll understand. Because
Yeah.
there was actually nothing sentimental or maudlin about it. It was just the sense of I'm in my home, which obviously your
Yeah.
mum's a huge part of,
Yeah.
and feeling that thing of, oh, here's another thing she misses out on and I miss out on
Yeah.
because she's not physically here. That's
Yeah.
actually making me feel quite sad. But I can see that for him, he was at a point in his life, he'd never lost anybody, he had no idea.
How lucky.
Yeah, well, yeah, but then I thought, now I look back on it telling you the story, I think, well, in doing that, he mightn't have understood, but I planted a seed. So maybe later when he has lost somebody,
Yeah.
you know, that will be in his memory somewhere
Yeah.
that there are other ways of coping and
Yeah.
of
it's-
acknowledging.
And it's what sits with you. Like everyone's going to have something
yeah,
different. And it's whatever you shared with that person as an
Yeah.
individual that, you know, that makes you feel fuzzy and warm, and you just think of that person and you just feel
Yeah.
the love. It's the connection that you have, the soul connection.
and wanting to share that with him
Yeah.
was actually a really beautiful thing that he couldn't appreciate or see
Yeah.
at the time.
So he didn't stay with you.
Oh, no, I'm not married to him.
Wow. Says
Wipe
everything.
him out.
No. No, that was fine. But with other people in my family, like when my granddad died, I wrote a poem all about him and
Yeah.
what I loved about him.
Yeah.
And I read it at his funeral.
Yeah, well,
So
hey,
I think writing's been a big thing
Yeah.
for me too.
I've been writing too, and that's why I'm doing this show.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a long ritual. it's a day by day,
You could write
24
letters
hours and
to the person that you've
Yeah.
lost.
yeah.
It's not,
Letters is a good thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
because it actually just helps you actively process it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Because
does.
writing
It does.
writing always says, well, you're an author.
I wrote a book which,
You wrote a
has,
book.
which
You
has
did.
got the backstory of my mother's
Yeah.
death.
Yeah.
So writing is very
Yeah.
powerful,
It is.
and it's made me address all these feelings that I'd never
yeah.
acknowledged before
Yeah.
for decades.
Mm.
And when you're talking, so my book, Juliet's saying, Julie,
Yeah.
that's the backstory, woven with the backstory of my mother's death. But it just made me think, like when you're talking about rituals, and I'm thinking, well, what is my ritual? My mother used to wear always bright lipstick.
Oh,
Yes.
She used to love chocolate. I love chocolate. So unintentionally, I've picked up, these are my little rituals, perhaps unintentionally
yeah.
honouring my mother
Yes.
without even being,
Yeah.
Yeah.
fully
Yeah,
aware of
that's
it.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, I went and got a tattoo. Yeah. You may laugh.
I love it.
But my son had tattoos and I didn't like tattoos.
Okay.
And the first thing that came into my mind after he died was, I've got to go and have a tattoo.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's in his honour. Like, that was like, you know.
Sounds like he
when-
was actually pushing you.
Well, that's your connection.
It
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
Connection.
Yeah.
It is, it's connection.
Yeah.
One of my other sons who came with me, he got a tattoo as well, and he says he'll never get over the image of seeing me on the table in a tattoo parlour getting a tattoo of his mum.
Well, because my mum knew she was dying and we all knew she was dying, she sat us down, my sister, my brother and I, and she put out all her jewellery. It was really heartbreaking. And she made us choose what we wanted. And then she said she's seen it happen where when somebody dies, afterwards there's a horrible fight.
Yeah.
I want this, I want that, you're not having
Yeah.
whatever. And she said, I do not want any of that when I die.
Yeah.
And of course we all sat back and none of us could do anything for a while.
Yeah.
And then she sort of said, no, come on, choose. And then my brother wasn't taking anything. And my mum said, you have to choose something. One day you might have a girlfriend or a wife you'd really like to give this to. And my sister and I both said to him, you must choose some stuff too, because he was like, I can't wear it.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I was only 23 when she died. I couldn't wear her jewellery at all. It just sat in my jewellery box forever. And once I became a mum, I started to wear her jewellery. I'm wearing her eternity ring today, and
That's nice.
I actually wear her jewellery now.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because I feel like that's another connection
Yeah,
that I
that
hadn't.
is. That
There's
is
probably a
another
lot of things
connection.
when you think about it
Yeah, you've
now.
got to think about it.
Yeah.
I
You'll
mean,
realise.
I've got
Yeah.
presents like
Yeah.
jewellery and stuff like that Adam gave me when he was
Yeah.
a kid, or things that he'd made,
Yes.
cards and pictures and that.
Yes.
And there's, you know, he gave me once for Mother's Day a birthday card. I was like,
That's great.
it was just really funny.
Yeah.
Because he thought, because my birthday's near Mother's Day,
Yeah.
but like, you
So you
know.
put two in one.
Yeah, he did.
Bargain. It's the bargain card.
Yeah, but you know, you have all these little things, and it is
Yeah.
that connection. It's really nice to have that, and you feel like when I mean, look, his wallet.
You still got his
I
wallet.
have his
Yeah.
wallet. It's worn and it's got holes in it. It's a connection. It's you know, it's something that you always have and you always
Yeah.
want. So
It's tangible.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
It's tangible.
yeah.
It's very important, and so whatever it is for people, and no one should judge anyone what makes them better.
Well, the tangible thing also enables a story to be shared,
It does.
because that's
Yeah.
what pretty much happens. That
Yeah.
you help that person live on for the people who maybe never met them.
Yes.
Like my children never
Yeah.
met their grandparents.
Mm.
Well, they knew their granddad, but only very briefly. They were very
Yeah.
little when he
And I
died.
wouldn't remember it.
No, and yeah, and when you tell stories about it,
Mm.
it becomes part of the family tapestry.
It does,
And that's
then
important.
That's the positive thing
Yeah.
coming out of it too. You really need to celebrate that person's life. You don't want to have sadness all the time around
No.
someone who's died, because
No.
then, you know, everyone's brought down in the whole
Yeah.
process of it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's everybody's unique, and maybe that's the key.
yeah,
You've got
that
to
is.
just
Everyone's unique.
when you can acknowledge your pain, and if it's through writing or it's maybe, as you said, your ritual of looking at Adam's photo and meditating or saying a prayer,
Yeah.
that's really special.